to Moments with Marianne. I'm so delighted we're spending this time here today. We have just a phenomenal show coming right up with special guest Jan Mundo, who's here today to talk to us about her new book, the-headache-healers-handbook. Now, Jan has held headache programs at medical centers, universities, and corporations, including Kaiser Permanente, Stanford University, and Apple. She's a certified somatic coach and massage therapist with advanced training in multiple healing modalities. So let's welcome to the show, Jan.
Thank you. Nice to meet you and nice to be with your listeners, Marianne.
Oh, what a pleasure it is to have you here. And I'm sure you get people just, asking you all the time, how can I heal my headache? And here you've got this fabulous book that has it all in here.
Yes, for the first time, I'm putting it all together in the written word so that people can really benefit from it.
And have all the information there. So why don't you start with, I always am so curious, and we get letters from our listeners all the time that want to know what starts people on a certain path. So how did you get started on this path?
Well, my mom had migraines, so when I was a kid, I would always see her lying down in her bedroom, curtains pulled, washcloth on her head. She was miserable, and I remember that a lot from my childhood, but I didn't really get them. Then in 1970, I learned that I could stop a headache or migraine by putting my hands on the front and the back of somebody's head. Somebody heard a claim about that, and so I just started experimenting with it. And after I learned about it and saw that I could do it, I started to become a magnet for people who had them. So wherever I was, somebody would exclaim that they had a headache or migraine, would have to either go lie down or leave the party, or they were just miserable. And so I would be curious to see if this hands-on method would work each time. So I would offer to, just let's go over into a corner and I'll help you stop your pain. Just all I'm going to do is put my hands on your head. And it worked each time. And so that's kind of how I got started with it. I just put my hands on a lot of heads and was able to stop their pain. I really didn't get them much because I was living a natural lifestyle, child of the 60s. I lived in a spiritual community, and we lived a natural lifestyle. We were in the country. We got a lot of exercise. We grew all our own food. We were vegans. I learned about my body because we had natural childbirth at home. It was very, as they say now, crunchy granola, but it was very informative about nature and how our bodies work and how our minds really have an influence on our bodies and vice versa. So that was my experience then, but still some people had headaches and migraines, or when I would go visit people, so I worked on them a lot, although I wasn't having a problem with it. Then when I left there and got back to big city life, which was in Los Angeles, where I'd grown up, and started going through perimenopause, that's when I started getting them. And boy, was I miserable. And I could time them by my periods. And so I started working on myself even more. And then I started deconstructing why I was getting them, and started doing a lot of mind-body reading, Deepak Chopra, Andrew Weil, Jon Kabat-Zinn, Gail Sheehy, Christiane Northrup, Herbert Benson, all the people that were pioneers in mind-body medicine and health and wellness. And I saw and realized that I was going through perimenopause pretty early, actually, and that when I would eat better, because I had changed from the more healthy lifestyle that I lived. I was under more stress. Plus, perimenopause does happen. Migraine gets more frequent because hormones are kind of all over the place. So I saw that when I slept better, ate better, was under less stress, drank more water, exercised, that I didn't get such a predictable migraine. So that's why I started putting together other therapies and kind of putting the whole picture together for myself. So that's how that part got started. And then I decided to put everything together. I went to massage school, became a massage therapist, then deconstructed my method, and because I wanted to see if it was just me that could do it or if other people could do it too, as far as stopping their own pain. And so I tested it on some people just with written instructions who I'd never touched or actually didn't even meet in person. And they were able to back down their migraine. So what I realized when I was deconstructing my method and writing steps of what I had been experiencing on the head all these years, that a headache or migraine had a predictable cycle of sensations. And so I would work on stilling those both physically and mentally with very light touch and focused concentration, and then move them out. And the sensations of the relief, which is what happens when the headache starts to ease, versus the working with the sensations of pain, which were, was the sensations of the migraine itself. Those were different, and so I would follow that. So that became fascinating to me, and I read a lot about headaches and migraines, both medical literature, scientific literature, consumer literature, research studies, and educated myself. And then the last piece is that, well, the last couple of pieces are that I began to see when people would be on my massage table, and I got my first referrals from a neurologist at UCLA, who's a headache specialist, that their emotional content would come up. And that led me farther and farther into exploring somatics and somatic coaching, somatic body work, which is how your history lives in your body and becoming aware of how you're shaped by your experiences in life, and then helping people unwind them through mind, body, emotion, spirit awareness. So I put all that together. And then the other part is that I read about a doctor, a PhD scientist, researcher, clinician who had migraines. He wrote a book about migraine called Victory Over Migraine. His name is Rodolfo Lowe, and that filled in the last piece for me about diet. So put all that together, then started teaching at medical centers and teaching private clients and teaching classes at corporations as well. So that's kind of the short, long story, or the long, short story.
Well, and what a brilliant perspective you have, coming from a upbringing where you learned so much about, how we intake food, how our bodies work, just how, being kind of that close to nature. It really does bring around a certain sense of knowledge that, had you grown up in the city, you would learn different things.
Right. Well, I had actually grown up in the city in Los Angeles, and my dad was an orthopedic surgeon. My mom was a nutritionist. So we ate healthfully at home, but I took a big departure after 4 years of college and started exploring more in the country, and that's when I did that. So I'd say it was young adulthood, and that really did shape me because it was such a departure from how I'd grown up.
Now, you mentioned all this amazing research that you've done. During that time, have you found that there are different causes of headaches? Yes.
Well, I was there's a small study done on my program of about 78 migraine patients. The research that I did was reading other people's research, but yeah, I guess you could call it research, but not, clinical or scientific research, but just my own education about it. And so they're medically or scientifically, they don't know the exact mechanism of migraines. There have been various theories that have been debated over the years, from brainstorms to neurochemicals to blood vessel changes to changes in the brain. And, most likely going to be combinations of all of that. And so there's always new research that is being, new things that are being discovered, because the ways that we have of measuring them and looking at them that scientists have and doctors have, it keeps moving along. As far as from my work, I see that combinations of factors cause headaches or migraines, and especially migraines. And that's what's so interesting about it, is because it's so individualized. Everybody has something a little different. There are some commonly troublesome, what are called triggers, that are, for instance, alcoholic beverages, especially red wine for some people, certain foods, certain cycles as far as your sleep or your breathing or your posture. So I see it as big combinations of factors. And for each person, because we're unique, it's different. And so that's what makes it so interesting, and yet can be so frustrating for people, because they have usually tried just about everything by the time they come to see me, and they can't, they might think, oh, well, it's this food, and then maybe they eliminate the food, or this medication will help, and they try the medication for a while, and then the migraines come back. So then if it was a food, maybe, say, for instance, cutting out caffeine or stopping red wine. Well, if their migraines didn't go away, then they might put it back in. But it still might be a contributing factor, but maybe not the whole picture.
So it's really kind of a test and see in some ways, kind of eliminating things maybe from the diet, getting better sleep, drinking more water, to kind of manage that. Is that kind of what happens during that process?
Yes. So in the book, I walk people through it step by step. It first starts with understanding the mind-body connection and how your thoughts can influence the tightness and tension in your body. And the body, by the way, is something that's really left out in most treatment of headache and migraine. And by that, I mean how much stress and tension people hold. Because that, too, can be added in with everything else. So it's how it all combines. But I call it the Chinese menu theory. Like when my family used to go to a restaurant, Chinese restaurant, for Sunday night dinner when we lived in L.A., and you could order family style, so you could order something from column A, column B, column C, and then they'd bring all the dishes out, and they'd put them on a big lazy Susan in the middle of the table, and everybody would take from everything, and that would make up your meal, right? So instead of ordering our family-style dinner, if somebody wanted to order up their migraine, and I'm using migraine now versus headaches, or tension-type headaches, and I should come back to that because I think you asked about the difference, and I might have gone off on a different tangent, but let me just say, with migraines, food is a big factor. So I'm not talking about ordering Chinese food. I'm talking about ordering your combination of factors when you have a migraine. So perhaps, you could order, instead of ordering dishes from column A, column B, column C, column D, and on, if you were to order up your personal headache triggers, you could order up, you could choose one from a potential trigger, if you didn't know what yet your triggers were. You could choose one from column A, for instance, something about your diet, okay, a trigger food. You could order up, and that may or may not give you a headache or a migraine. You could order up a trigger from column B, for instance, tightness in your neck and shoulders. May or may not give you a headache or migraine. You could order up trigger from column C. Guess who's got that, right? Mm-hmm. May or may not give you a migraine or a headache. And you could order up a trigger from column D, say not getting enough sleep. And let's go one further. For a woman, you could order up just about to get your period, okay? So you might not get headache or migraine from each of those individually. But when you combine them, A and B, A, B, and C, A, B, C, and D, and on, that's when they all add up. So the process in the book is about talking about what some of those triggers are in every area of your life. So your environment, your posture, your foods, what and when you eat and drink, your stress and how to handle it, your things that you do every day with your body, the weather, different scents and fumes that might disturb you, pollens. So talk about everything, and then so that people can become aware of all the different factors in all parts of their lives that could influence them. And then I give practices that show them first how to track it, and then also how to combat it. So what is a healthy diet? How to breathe that puts less stress and tension in your body and helps you just be present and be able to be more relaxed. What helps you with your posture? Meditation that helps you also be more present and be able to be aware of your thoughts, right? And then a really powerful part as far as tracking is looking at each week, so everything in order that it occurs, so that you can look at one day and then the next day and the next day and see, well, what happened the day before? If I got a migraine this morning, what happened the day before? It didn't just come out of the blue. You know, what could have contributed? And we also look at people, how their day goes as far as, what about that phone conversation, or what happened at work, or what about that interaction with somebody at work, or with somebody at home, or with somebody when you're driving your car, you know. So we look at everything, and then one of the big overlooked parts, and the part that's so important, is really learning how to use your touch to relax and soften your shoulders, your neck, and your head and your face. And then lastly, I teach people how to work on their own headache or migraine, and that's after they've built up all their other skills and are hopefully preventing more of them. And then the other thing that we also look at is your emotional life and how to be more centered in your day-to-day life, and how your history, perhaps trauma, perhaps just ways that you learn to be in your body and your family and regard your body and regard yourself and your family and your surroundings, how that could be also affecting how you carry everything in your body and affecting, therefore, your headaches or migraine.
Well, it's so interesting how all this is so interconnected, and so you have to look at that bigger picture so you understand what's going on with each individual, as you were saying. I mean, because we all are different.
Right, and everybody has different combinations and things that affected them. And then it's also, so it's learning how to look both at the same time, hold the big picture and hold the little picture, like all the details that you take for granted, all the things that we learn as habits that we just take for granted, they become embodied, they're unconscious to us. Those can also affect us. So it's that dynamic between micro and macro, I guess you could say, or big world, small world, all together.
Well, and yeah, so this kind of leads me to my question for you, because we kind of were talking about the headaches. I mean, I'm sure when people have a headache or migraine, they're just like, it doesn't matter what kind I have, this is just it. How do you identify which type of headache or migraine a person's having?
So I really appreciate you asking that again, looping back around. So first of all, I do want to say that I'm not a doctor, so I don't diagnose. So most of the people all the people, excuse me, just took a sip of water. All the people that come to see me have been diagnosed usually by their neurologist and usually by a headache specialist. But for sure, they've been to their family practitioner, general practitioner, and often to a lot of other doctors. Ear, nose, and throat doctor, allergist, maybe psychologist, psychiatrist, an acupuncturist, chiropractor, body worker, Reiki practitioner.
They've done it all.
They've done it all, and so they've had diagnoses. So I don't do that, but I use the clues from what they tell me and their headache history questionnaire and putting all that together and how they describe their pain and all that happens into understanding what's going on for them, because the therapies that we are doing will have different significance, and you will apply different things at different times, and some things will be more important if you're having or you tend to get tension-type headaches versus migraines. So I just wanted to give that preamble and disclaimer.
Mm-hmm.
So for tension-type headache, it's described as having a tight hat band, or you could say some people describe it as a vice around the circumference of their head, so around their forehead and all the way around. So forehead, or almost as if you had wraparound shades, but also going up to the top of your head as well. So that tightness. And then it can go down into the neck and shoulders and have general tightness there. So it's more of a tightening tension. Now, migraine is very different. Migraine is, well, I'd like to say if you've never had one, have you ever had, if you are of age, hopefully, a hangover? Or have you ever had a bad flu or virus where you did have like pulsing, pounding, real disorientation, you can hardly move, make a teeniest movement, and you'll start to feel sicker and like your head feels like it's going to explode. There's almost like a pulsation or an electrical component to them, or you get really disabled. You get light sensitive, sound sensitive, smell sensitive, taste sensitive. Everybody has their different variations of this. Some people beforehand get what's called an aura, where you get real disturbances in the visual field, which can be alarming to people because they sometimes think they might be having a stroke or other, serious condition. So they might have zigzaggy lines, or part of their vision might be blanked out. So that can happen. And then people, like I said, can barely move. They usually end up in a darkened room. They feel very, very sick, and then you can feel that way afterward as well. Sometimes they feel nauseated. They feel sometimes people vomit. So, and then when you're coming out of it, which can take they can last from 24 to usually 72 hours. I mean, I've had people say they've had them for 2 years, right? But that's generally how long they last, and from, a day to a few days. And then people can feel like they have a little hangover of those symptoms, or like they're kind of coming out of a fog, or either they might feel tired or not have appetite or not be able to sleep, or so all that can happen coming out of them as well. So it's very disabling. And then there are also other headaches called cluster headaches, which I haven't dealt with many of them. They're very rare. They're mostly men, mostly smokers, and those have their own particular set of symptoms, and they're very different than migraine because instead of the slightest movement bothering you and having to lie down in a darkened room, you tend to want to pace the floor, pound your head against the wall. It's known as the worst pain ever. And so they're much more rare, and I have not seen a lot of them, although I have worked with some people who have been diagnosed with them who seem to have more symptoms of migraine, and they were helped by my program. Those are the three. And then there's also the three major types. There are about 300 that are classified in diagnostic criteria called the International Headache Diagnostic International Classification of Headache Disorders, and those are used by medical doctors so that they can classify and give medications for the different types. But like I said, I don't deal with that. But there is one other type that's worth mentioning, which is called a dangerous headache, which is when you're having the worst headache ever. And you definitely want to, even if you've had a diagnosis, get those checked out and call your doctor immediately, because those can be signs of other more serious conditions for which the headache is actually secondary. The headache isn't the primary cause. They're called, the headache might be secondary. And so some of those causes can be, of course, meningitis, or if you're having a stroke, or if you are having a flu or virus, or I know I'm forgetting one, but they're dangerous headaches, so you definitely want to check those out.
On that note, we're going to pause here for a quick break. You've been listening to Moments with Marianne, and we've been speaking with Jan Mundo on her new book, The Headache-Healers Handbook. We'll be right back after these messages.
Internationally recognized and award-winning author Judy Goodman works and teaches outside the box of limited thinking. Working with people from every walk of life, her goal is to empower you to be the best you can be, no matter what the challenge is. Born with the gift of seeing beyond our normal vision, she has an extraordinary gift of working with every challenge. Teaching beyond conventional wisdom, her work is described as life-changing. Visit judygoodman.com. That's judygoodman.com.
There comes a moment when you realize you're somewhere special, when you discover that each beautiful creature that you see has been rescued from a life of absolute horror and brought to this incredibly free place. Here's where their lives were forever changed, and where yours will as well. Discover over 500 tigers, bears, and lions at the brand new visitor center at the Wild Animal Sanctuary just outside Denver. For more information, visit wildanimalsanctuary.org. Discover true freedom at the Wild Animal Sanctuary.
Have you ever had the sense that your thoughts might actually be doing something? Ancient secrets of manifesting have been masterfully revealed in the award-winning book Manifesting 1-2-3 by Ken Elliott. For the first time, the author's experiences and stories in this book describe exactly how your thoughts can create anything. You've been doing this all your life, but it's never been fully explained for you until now. Visit manifesting123.com for more information today. Manifesting123.com.
There are nearly 2 million Americans living with amputation. Many live right here in San Antonio. Becoming an amputee can be scary, frustrating, isolating, but there's no reason to feel alone. The San Antonio Amputee Foundation is here to help support you and guide you toward resources such as home and car modifications and even prosthetic limbs. For more information or to make a donation, visit saamputee.org. We'll help you live a full, active life, one step at a time. San Antonio Amputee Foundation, healing limbs, hearts, and souls.
Welcome back to Moments with Marianne. We've been talking with Jan Mundo on her new book, The Headache-Healers Handbook. So Jan, you talk about this connection in your book, the mind, body, headache, and kind of spirit connection. Can you explain more about what that is?
To do this in the book. I do it more at length, and so I walk people through the steps. But a shorthand version of it is just close your eyes for a minute and imagine that if you're comfortable with that in your surroundings, but just imagine that. Think of a problem that you have, okay, and it could be headaches or migraines, or it could be anything else, and just bring that to mind. And let your body follow along to this thought of, I am always going to have this problem. And just let your body move to that as if you're expressing that with your body. I'm always going to have this problem. I'm always going to have these headaches or migraines. I thought that this book, or I thought that Jan would be able to help me, or this therapy would be able to help me, but no, it can't, and I'm always going to be stuck here, and I'm always going to have this pain. And just let your body move to match that thought. Like, what would it do if you had that thought? What did you notice?
I noticed there was kind of like a little bit of a tense feeling with that, because it's like, oh, if my body's always going to do this, not sure about it.
Right. So it's a bummer, right? And so where did you feel that in your body? That tension was all over? Was it your neck? Was it your shoulders?
My neck and the back of my head.
Yeah, me too. And then what happened to your breathing? Did you notice anything about that?
Oh, yeah. It's like the anxiety sets in. You can feel it's like, shortness of breath, kind of like, okay, this is going to happen.
Yeah, like I can hear when you're saying that almost like a collapse or an inevitability to it. Like I'm stuck here, kind of, right? Okay, so now what happens when you do this? Close your eyes again. And let your body move along to match the thought. I am never again going to have this pain. I'm never going to have these problems. I'm never again going to feel this headache, this tightness, this migraine. I'm not going to feel disabled. I am going to be able to live my life free of pain. I can go to work. I can be with my family. I can do social activities. I can be creative. I can exercise. I can enjoy food. Oh, my God, I feel wonderful. I'm free. And did something change when you did that?
Oh, yeah. You can just feel the lightness of it all. It just feels light everywhere.
Yes. Awesome. Totally, right? So that was just one. I don't know. I didn't time it. But that was two thoughts. Those are two thoughts in the space of a couple of minutes, right? So what is our mind always doing? We're always thinking something. So our body is always responding and either tightening or opening. Now, of course, I said move to match the feeling, but you didn't feel all, disillusioned or in despair or feeling like you'd be stuck somewhere when I said, oh, you're free, right? And so your body didn't tighten up when I said, oh, you're free. And I'm pretty sure it didn't open up and feel lighter when you thought that you'd always be stuck in pain, right? So our body is always responding to our thoughts. So that's one way of really getting in touch with your mind and body and how they work together. So it's not just a one-off, it's not a one and done. It's something that you practice being an observer of. And that's why meditation and breathing, all the stress reduction practices and even gentle exercise, why they can start to help, because you can start to become more of an observer of what is happening in your body and what is happening with your thoughts. And so when somebody is going through a program like this and I'm asking them, and then they're asking themselves, okay, so see if you can shift this habit. See if you can shift this about your foods or about your breathing or about having a meditation practice where you sit calmly and notice your thoughts. People will go through bumps in the road. And so that's why it's always important to realize actually that you are having a bump in the road, or that you are maybe resisting something, or you are changing something big or even something small about your life, that your mind and body will be reacting and responding to that. So it's important to notice that they are so that you can come back to that kind of being more open. And one way of describing that, some of the teachers that I've had are Gay and Kathleen Hendricks, and they're the first teachers that showed me about the mind-body connection as far as how we live in our bodies and becoming aware of what our sensations are telling us, the messages that our bodies are giving us. So they call that kind of openness wonder vision. So are you in survival vision, which is more like the first set of thoughts that we had, like being stuck in pain, versus being in one division, which is more like wondering about a problem and being curious about a problem. And that's the best characteristic and quality that you can cultivate as a quote-unquote headache detective, where you're trying to figure out what all your triggers are and what in your life is adding up to creating this pain. And so that curiosity is also a way of having, when you're in a more open state, you can get more information, and you can be more aware of how you're being affected on a moment-by-moment basis. Does that make sense?
Oh, yeah. Well, and I know in your book you talk about creating balance through awareness. It sounds like that's what you're describing in some way. It's that curiosity, you're kind of checking things out. Is that correct? Or I'm sure there's always more to it.
Yes, exactly right.
Yeah, what a beautiful place to be, because then you're really present with what's going on.
Right. And also I make it very practical so that people can actually ground in the reality of looking at it. So I teach them how to keep a headache diary. I mentioned it before, but it's really important because a lot of times we might have an aha about something and we'll forget, or we might eat a particular food or have a particular interaction and discount it because we think we know what our triggers are, or we've eliminated before or changed something about our lives and then maybe added it back in, or we took it out but didn't see a change. But just looking at that combination and looking at how things are going along. So it really helps to be grounded in actually having a diary and being able to look at it and your life play by play, basically, so that you can start to dissect it. And then when you start adding practices in that help you relax or take away your stress or reduce your stress or help you live a more balanced life, then and eliminate your triggers. And that can also be how you work with your posture and carrying your stuff, what I like to say. When you look at it all,
the carrying of the stuff.
The carrying of the stuff. Like clients who come in California, before I lived in New York, where most people are using public transportation, although now we have Uber and Via and all those services. But anyway, they would come in from the car and just walk down my path into my house, and it was where I had my home office studio, and they'd have huge, heavy bags of stuff with them. I'd be like, how much did you actually need to carry from the car to the office? Or how much did you need to even carry with you in general? Because we'll just pile stuff in there, and it can affect the tension in your shoulders and your posture and all that. Anyway, I got off on a tangent as usual, but I don't remember what the question was.
But you know what? But it's important because when people look at things like posture and travel and how we load ourselves down with stuff during the day, and it could be as simple as things that we're carrying around. It could be like, I know in your book you talk about stuff like the emotional portion of that as well. And a lot of people don't realize how big a part that plays into it. And I'm so glad you did that exercise because it really shows how much the mind can either dictate it one way or another.
Yes. Yeah. Well, the emotional part, are you talking about the parts about trauma, or tell me more specifically?
Well, do you know what? I'm glad you brought that up. So why don't we talk about how trauma it affects migraines and headaches? Maybe it could be childhood trauma.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I've worked with a fair amount of people who have had trauma, whether it's physical, emotional, sexual, mental, and some of that comes from my somatics training and some with additional training with trauma. But as I mentioned, how I got into it was that when I'd be working with people early on in doing massage work and then headache work and then helping them loosen their bodies around that, they would start crying or start having memories, or their anger would emerge, or deep sadness, or, just from different parts of their bodies being touched, or having their shoulders loosened, touching the back of their neck, or even their jaw or cheek. So different emotions would start to emerge, and I thought that was really fascinating. And so the more I learned from the somatic point of view, which is mind, body, emotions, and spirit, and how our living body affects us, I would see that we were in the present, but they were being affected by experiences that they'd had long ago, and that those experiences literally shaped them. So had them hold themselves either to protect or to tighten so that somebody couldn't get in on any level, or pull away from people in order to be safe, or move toward people perhaps to get more love and to be recognized. Like, all those had literally a shape, and those can, in a way, keep you from experiencing the present. And so when those shapes got, in a way, disturbed by being said, well, hello, I'm softening your shoulders, hello, are you here? Just being in the present would engage their past. And so by actually becoming more and more present to their bodies in the specific locations and even points that they were holding, that they had shaped to be safe or protect or get love, then they would start to open to the experiences. And the more they opened to those past experiences, the more they were able to release them. So it could be anger, tears, laughter, memories, having those conversations again in those ways, and then being able to fill in the parts that were missing. So being able to provide so that they could be open to having and receiving love and loving themselves, and be open to how their bodies felt on a moment-by-moment basis. My clients were able to unwind what got them stuck in the first place and got them, tight or not being able to be present. And then the more they were able to let go of that past experience, it's not that it disappears, but it didn't have such an emotional charge, and it was not held in that same way in their bodies, then they were able to actually be more present right now to what is happening right now to them. And so they were more able to either, if they needed to protect, it's not like you just have to be wide open. If they needed to protect, they could protect themselves by removing themselves from a situation, or speaking up, or taking a stand, or taking care of themselves and being, it's like, no, I know I shouldn't eat that, or I know that I've already had my limit of social engagement for right now. I need to take some time for myself and just be quiet, right? So the more they're actually able to take better care of themselves, because they're able to be present to the messages that their bodies were giving them, because it wasn't always in reaction to something, but it was now in response to what was happening right now. And it's very complicated, and it's very beautiful. It's very powerful, and I feel honored that people trust me in that place to help be present and help them make those changes. And that happens with a lot of people who suffer with headaches and migraines, because a lot of times take care of themselves in the present and not either feel like they're always responsible to taking care of everybody else, or whether it's at work or at home, or, that they can really be more present to their own bodies and take care of themselves. And that really plays a big part in, of course, self-care.
Well, and so with all the people that come to you, and I know there are thousands that come to you in regards to help for this over the years, what would you say is like one of the number one reasons you see people having headaches for?
Well, again, it's combinations of factors, so I'd say that that's number one. But as far as migraines, I mentioned this book, Rodolfo Lowe's book, Victory Over Migraine. Small little book, and it's now out of print, but he talks about low blood sugar and evening out the blood sugar. And that's been really, really influential for people with migraine and just made such a big difference. So if I had to choose, I would say just looking at that and his philosophy, and mine is a little different because I work with everything, not just diet. His was only about diet, but it's so powerful. And so he talks about how having too many carbs, and he discovered it because he used to get migraines when he was a kid and realized that when he would go to the movies, they'd load up on candy. So he started deconstructing it for himself. And so to even out the low blood sugar, what he suggested was 6 small meals a day or 3 meals and 3 snacks, and incorporating protein in each one. And so that's what I talk about a lot, and I help people work with that because a lot of times there's been in the past, 30 years or so, maybe a little less, there's been a move for high-carb, low-fat diets in the United States. And so we've, that's been a factor. And so he talks about eating protein early and often. And that's what I talk about in my book, is to incorporate protein. Because what I was trying to say is we think that we're eating healthfully if we have, say, yogurt, like a low-fat yogurt and fruit for breakfast, and then a salad for lunch, and then maybe at dinner we'll have some protein. But what happens is that for people with migraine, especially, that it makes your a diet like that will make your blood sugar rise and drop, rise and drop, rise and fall, rise and fall. So that what you want to try and do is eat high-quality protein, and if you have protein that is not necessarily low-fat and it's full-fat, say with yogurt, but you eat maybe a little less of it, so that maybe if you don't want to have that much fat, but that it, or, instead of no fat, non-fat, you have low fat. That if you have full-fat products, that it slows down your digestion, and you, if you have some whole grains with your protein, that also slows down your digestion, so it makes for fewer rises and dips in your blood sugar. So if people eat early and often and wait all the way till dinner, so if you're going to go work out first thing in the morning, or you go to work, you want to always have something first. You don't want to wait till you get to work and then have some yogurt around 9 or 10 in the morning. You want to reduce the time between when you wake up and when you eat, and then you want to have protein. So say some soft-boiled eggs, scrambled egg in the morning, or some, like I said, full-fat yogurt, some leftover protein from dinner. Say you had part of your burrito left from dinner. So that you have that, and then have to try and stick to non-sweet snacks, right? So maybe you have a little bit of cheese or some hummus and dip for a snack. Maybe you have some fruit, but if you have some fruit, maybe have some nut butter with it. So banana and nut butter, for example. So a diet like that, and there are many, many variations that you can just keep having protein and eating early and eating often throughout your day. But that really has made, I'd say, the most difference in people who have migraines' lives.
Wow, it's so impressive, the work that you've done to help people move beyond migraines. I feel, and you talk about this in your book, there's like a light at the end of the tunnel, because I think a lot of times people feel like they're trapped by it.
Yes, that's what happens. It can go on for years. And one of the things that they don't realize, there are certain things about medications that can also cause rebound headaches if you take them less often than you might think. For a lot of medications, they can cause rebound because they have caffeine in them, or they have barbiturates or opiates or combinations with caffeine, or even some of the triptans. If you take them even as little as 2.5, 3 times per week, they can cause rebound headaches. So you can be doing everything else that you know to live a healthy lifestyle, but if you're still taking the medications because you think it's the only way that you can relieve your pain, and the only way that you can, the only way basically that you can relieve it, that can perpetuate the problem. So that's why the other thing that I'd say is so important. I mean, it's all important. Like, breathing is really important. That makes a really big difference, breathing lower in your body, and meditation to calm your thoughts and your posture as well. I would love to get into that more another time, but really it's a huge thing to relieve your shoulders, neck, head, and face. And a lot of people don't do it because they're carrying so much tension. They don't realize, first of all, that they're doing it, and they're holding all that tension. And I will say that having head-forward posture, so I lied. I am going to talk about posture. We're always leaning into our computers, or leaning to see over, well, if you're short like me, to see over the steering wheel, or just even leaning forward, to look at traffic to see when you're driving, or having our heads down because we're texting. There are so many ways that, and even leaning back, so leaning back on the couch but watching TV, or leaning back and in your desk chair because you think that you're more relaxed that way, but then still looking at the screen or doing your work at your desk. That all leads to head-forward posture. So what that's like is it's like carrying a bowling ball out in front of yourself and in front of your body, and so it increases the tightness in your shoulders because you're working them as if you'd be working a bicep. Doing a bicep curl at the gym. So it makes us, all these muscles work. So before you even start the body work, which is what I was going to talk about, and what's great is that once you become familiar, you can tell where you're holding your pain. So you're in the best position to relieve it once you have the techniques. Before even starting body work, you want to align your posture, and you want to bring your head back over your shoulders and your shoulders over your hips, so that you can, and it's not that's not a one-off either. You have to always be doing it all throughout the day. As much as I know, and as much as I've trained, as much as I've worked for people, I have to tell myself all the time. And if I don't, I suffer for it. So then when your body's aligned, you can start to do some shoulder squeezes, and I give specific techniques about how to do this and about how to make it effective, because you want to have soft hands touch a tight body. If your hands are tight, then they're just going to put tightness in. So it's learning how to use your touch and also use your awareness to feel when you are softening your body. So when you work on yourself, it's really interesting and really great because you're feeling your pain from the inside. You might not know exactly where it is. Like, you might think, oh, well, it's my whole shoulder. Maybe it is, but usually it's a bunch of different points along your shoulder ridge. So then once you learn how to warm those and soften those, and then when you're building that awareness, you can start to tell the difference. You can feel that softening and that difference and that change in tightness to relaxation. You can feel that on the inside, and you can feel it on the outside. So that helps you also build up your skills so that you're more aware of when you're starting to build that up and tighten again, and then it's like it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy in a way. It becomes a loop where you'll start to become more aware of your tightness. The more you work on yourself, the more you're present to how your body feels when you're doing that, then the more you're able to feel when you're starting to collect it, and then say, oh, I can do something about this. I'll work on myself like I did the last time. So that if you keep becoming familiar with the territory, it's like going down the same road a gazillion times, right? The more you go down it, the more you become aware of it. So the more you work on yourself and feel yourself soften and loosen, then the more you'll want to do it, and the more you'll be able to be skilled at doing it. And then the less that will become a factor in adding up to becoming one of your migraine triggers that adds up to your headache, or your migraine, I should say, also tension headache.
We could talk forever on this. My goodness, you're such a wonderful resource on this topic. I mean, you know your stuff. Where can people connect with you and learn more about the Headache Healers Handbook?
They can go to my website, which is www.the-headache-coach.com, and I have links to all my social media on there, and links to where you can buy the book, which is wherever books are sold, the major sites. And also at New World Library, my publisher, they have a page up there for me for the Headache Healers Handbook as well. So I'll have all those on my website, and would love it if people go check it out and follow me on social media as well. And I look forward to the book helping everyone that needs help.
Well, Jan, thank you so much for taking the time to be on the show with us here today.
Thanks for having me, Marianne. I really enjoyed it.
Thank you, Jan. It's been such a pleasure to spend this time with you and learn more about headaches and migraines. Again, if you're looking to connect with Jan, you can do that at the-headache-coach.com. Well, we're at the end of our time today. I would like to thank everyone for tuning in. You're listening to Moments with Marianne. And remember, make every moment count.
In a single moment, your life can change. Moments with Marianne is a transformative hour that covers an endless array of topics with the best of the best. Her guests are leaders in their fields, ranging from inspirational authors, top industry leaders, and business and spiritual entrepreneurs. Each guest is gifted and a true visionary, a recognized leader in her own work, and while teaching others to develop, refocus, and grow, Marianne will bring the best guest and sometimes a special surprise. Don't miss this. You never know just which moment will change your life forever. Moments with Marianne airs every Thursday, Friday, and Sunday at 8 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Mountain Time. Make sure to tune in and visit momentswithmarianne.com for more information.